YouTube, what's going on, man? I've been on sort of a hiatus, taking time to work on John Keith's record, producing, mixing that. Definitely creatively stretched me in to go to deeper and different places. I'm super excited. It's done. It's available for pre-order on iTunes and on our website. Super dope merch bundles, man. So that means that now that that's on its way, we have a release date, December 14th. You'll see me back here on YouTube creating more content for you guys. Working on Indie Jones 3, getting ready to work on Paul Russell's next album. But listen, if you aren't on the Patreon, check out the Patreon because there's a brand new full interview with my man Montel Fish for our podcast. We're going to be dropping more podcasts through the Patreon there first and then kind of scaling it here on this channel. But recently, one of my favorite YouTubers hit me up, my man Brandman Sean, who I've been a fan of probably for about a year and a half, almost 2 years now. He's been doing YouTube. I've been following him, and he hit me up and somehow stumbled across my stuff and wanted to interview me. And I was like, heck yeah, super excited. So he interviewed me, and I realized after doing this interview, which is super dope, I'll link it below that you go watch the entire thing. We cover a lot of stuff. It's over an hour long. But I realized I covered some stuff in the interview that I've never talked about before on this channel, which is my motivation for the type of artist that I sign and my plight as a white rapper. And I wanted to share that with you guys. Check it out. Some of the stuff I say might be controversial. It might trigger some of you guys, fellow white rappers, but that's okay. Keep it lovely and peaceful and nice and kind in the comments section. If you say anything crazy, your comment may get deleted, you may get banned. I'm petty enough to keep track of all that kind of stuff on this channel because we're intimate and we family and all that good stuff. So listen, pre-order that John Keith record, December 14th, Honey Blonde. The merch bundles are crazy. All that stuff's linked up below. And if you're not on Patreon, check out the Patreon. We're going to be bringing you more content, more videos, more podcasts, and more stuff. So thank you so much. Salute to my man, Brandman Sean. Appreciate you doing this interview. Probably one of the best interviews I think I've done. And I'm excited to share this little clip with you guys. So
you have your own label, but you're not, and you have an artist coming up under you. What do you think you feel like? What does it even take to really say you have an artist under you and to actually make that artist successful when you're an artist yourself?
Yeah, I think a lot of artists are afraid to sign people more talented than them. And so for me, that's always been the thing is I'm okay with, if you look at the history of the artists that have signed, I've always signed artists more talented than me and never been afraid to give them my platform. So I think one, having vision, I think a lot of people will lack vision, you know, so they may have the mechanics of it, but they just don't know what's going on in terms of like having a vision for somebody else that's even bigger than for them, you know. Right. I'm okay with people, you know, going further than me. I'm completely okay with that. And then I would say for having something to offer them, right? Like we don't do advances and you know, here's 10 grand or whatever. Like we don't do that, you know what I'm saying? Because that's to me, that's the debt system. And I don't like the major labels for that because you get in debt, you stay in debt, your entire career is in debt. You know what I mean? And that's a lot of people don't know a lot of these major label artists are in debt to the labels and they're just hoping to recoup. And then it's 4 or 5 albums later, they still haven't recouped. And so I don't believe in that system. So what I had to figure out what is my value. So one, I could do so much of everything in-house, right? We mix our own records in-house. We can record. We have, you know, a professional studio in-house. So when I'm offering studio time, I'm offering mixing services. I'm offering video editing. I'm editing video for a lot of these projects. I have the dots and the relationships to find the photographer on the low, to find the designer on the low, to find the cinematographer, the video guy on the low, or just outright do it myself. You know what I mean? If we don't have the budget for it, I'll just shoot it myself because that was my last job before I did music, is I actually worked at my church as the video guy. So I could do a lot of video stuff, pretty inexpensive, you know, but I'm also, even that, like I'm trying to put people on to build up video guys and, you know, photographers and designers. And so I think you have to have something to offer them. And so for them, I may not be like, yo, I'm gonna put $10,000 on your project. Like, I don't have that, but one, I don't want them to feel indebted to me. But what I do have is time. I have experience. I have relationships, and I have systems in place that can take a guy like Paul Russell and build them up within a matter of 3-4 months, build them up to 2,000 real active, engaged followers on Instagram. You know what I mean? And then once those 2,000 hear his solo project, it's just going to spread like wildfire, you know, because all you need, again, 1,000 super fans. You know what I'm saying? You get 1,000 super fans that really rock with you. They'll be your evangelist, not, you know, not to make the corny Christian tie-in, but they'll be your evangelist. They'll go spread the message for you. And so that I would say that's what I have to offer. And signing people more talented than myself is something that I feel like I've always done and I've never been intimidated by.
That's really interesting, especially being an artist. So many people have that ego. So to say, even say somebody's more talented than them is probably going to be hard for a lot of people. But if you want to also be a record exec, per se, have your own label, you kind of need to sign people more talented than you. I mean, otherwise, yeah, it just wasn't work. I think the fact that you have a label and this is the only artist that you have right now.
I have Paul Russell and I have John Keith. John Keith is amazing. He's an artist from Southeast San Diego. Really, really dope. He sings, he raps, he has the look, he acts. He's a you know, a black kid with natural blonde dreadlocks, and he sounds like a culmination of, like, you know, Kendrick and Shmino and Chance a little bit. You know what I mean? He's a monster. He's a freak of nature. Like, these kids are so good, man. And yeah, I'm aware that, like, I'm a white dude in hip hop. So there's even certain things that, like, can work against me. Like, the tonal quality of my voice may not sound as cool as somebody that, you know, grew up singing in church or grew up, you know, with African-American genetics, that your voice just may sound cooler because you're black. You know what I'm saying? Like, I understand all these things. And so not to, you know, using very broad strokes, but there are talent developed, meaning nurture, right? If somebody grows up singing and grows up in a musical household, I did not. And there's just genetics and natural, like, Paul Russell just has an amazing voice. Like, his voice just sounds good. The majority of our records together, he recorded on his iPhone, and people can't tell the difference. I recorded on my $3,000 Neumann, and he recorded on his iPhone. That's how good he is. That's just God-given genetics, right? And then there's someone like John Keith, who grew up singing in church. He grew up with the vibe and the soul, so he can come up with melodies super dope. You know what I mean? And the black church is really instrumental for all pop music, really, if we're going to go back to it and take music appreciation class. It all goes back to the black church. That's going to give somebody an advantage. They grew up singing Fred Hammond, you know what I'm saying, singing these songs, these beautiful 4-part harmonies. You know what I mean?
That's real. That's real. You mentioned being a white rapper, man. Do you think white rappers still have a hard time?
I think the white privilege that white rappers have definitely outweighs whatever plight we have as white rappers. That's even, it's like, this is so funny to me. So yeah, like, because I'm white, especially in the Christian space, but just because I'm white in general, like, I'm viewed as more safe. I'm viewed as less risky. You know what I mean? Like, I definitely have advantages getting booked for shows. There's so many advantages just as a white male that I have, that whatever disadvantages I may have, I don't have the coolest voice, so I didn't grow up in a musical household. You know what I'm saying? Oh, you know, hip hop is a black art, black culture, and so I'm trying to do a black art. You know, like, those are minute in comparison of the advantages that I've had, you know, growing up, just being viewed as a white male. And I've never, like, for me, it's been tough because my first language is Russian. Like, you meet my dad, he looks Arab. You know what I mean? Like, I've never really, like, identified with white culture because I've always grown up around black people, and I'm an immigrant. I'm from Azerbaijan, Baku. I'm half Armenian. I'm a refugee. So I've always lived in this weird tension, you know, but the society that we're in views me as a white male, and I instantly have advantages because of that.
Man, that's interesting. That's interesting to hear, particularly because you have that immigrant and black kind of mix versus actually being the more traditional white. But you said you still get those quote unquote advantages. This is how I personally see, like, it's an abridged version of how I see the game for white rappers, right? So let me know what you think about it, how you agree. Now, first you had a hard time for white rappers, very hard time. I mean, you had Vanilla Ice was like the poster boy of white rapper, right? You know, you had the Beastie Boys that did their thing, but that was like a, you know, that was an outlier. But then you have Eminem, right? And at first he had his hardships. He was coming up where he was, and it was hard because he was a white rapper and there was already a bad perception. But once he hits a certain threshold of awareness, now there's an advantage, right? Because now all these people that like hip hop music before, like little white kids, that they see somebody who looks like them being a white rapper, and all of them are naturally going to flock to them. Then you talk about whatever white male privilege exists, all of those kind of things. And then you talk about first mover advantage, basically, where he's like the first, like super, like dope white rapper that was acknowledged on that level. And then next thing you know, you have like an icon, right? That's how I look at Eminem's story. And so anybody who disagrees with the first mover thing, it's the same thing with Obama being president. Obviously, things work against him. He gets to a certain level, you get a lot of advantages, not necessarily the white privileged version of advantages, but you still get advantages just as far as your brand and acknowledgement being the first black president, right? You get a certain allure to you. Now, after Eminem did what he did and broke those planes, it's weird because there's nobody who's ever reached Eminem's level or close to it to this day in terms of the white rapper side. But it has opened up a door of a lot of people who kind of sound like him, right? But then a lot of people, a lot of white rappers who are found a lot of success. But it's weird because I feel like the industry's cut up into a space where you could be a successful white rapper, but not be anywhere a part of the main culture in terms of black culture, like the media. You don't have to be on BET or NXXL or Source or Breakfast Club. They don't even have to know who you are. Like none of those outlets have to know who you are, right? For a long time, a lot of people did not know who G-Eazy was, right? And it was only because one of my Asian friends moved out of San Francisco. I went to visit her, and she was playing G-Eazy stuff. I didn't even know G-Eazy was from like that area, so now it makes sense, like in hindsight, why she was the one who introduced him to me. But there's so many people that exist that are winning and having full careers without the acknowledgement or the okay of the black side of the culture that typically is known for running it, right? Is that pretty much safe to say in terms of the white rapper perspective? I know you don't fully relate to it, and especially you have all these additional like niches like Christian, so you're living a whole nother level of hardship. But how do you feel about some of those observations?
Yeah, I think you nailed it, bro. I think you really nailed it. And I think to go a little deeper on that, I think that is the beauty of niches in the space that we're in, where like you can find people are looking for something. People are looking for themselves in the type of art they consume, right? So like if I watch your videos, it's because I identify with you to some degree, right? Like I see a bit of myself inside of you. And so therefore, I think that's how a lot of it works. And so I think you talking about that is a testament to also just where we are with technology and where we are with culture. Where like, I remember even Murs on Hip Hop DX did this thing called Hick Hop, where it was like country Confederate flag hanging white dudes rapping. And I just was like, this is weird. You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah. But I think that's where we are as a culture. So that's cool. That's dope. You know what I'm saying? But I think the tough part for me is that I think there still has to be a level of reverence for, like, bro, this is black culture. This is black art. Like, I'm white, but I'm a guest. You know what I'm saying? Like, you have to be respectful of the space. Like, you have to have some type of framework and foundational understanding. And I think some white rappers don't display that. You know what I'm saying? Some whether it's like Iggy Azalea, and just you could just tell she's just kind of ditzy. She doesn't understand like what this is. You know, there's no context of culture. Or you know, a kid like Lil Xan saying that Tupac is boring. You know what I mean? And it's like, bro, like no. Like you don't get to make a social or musical critique of Tupac ever. Like that's just be a rule. Like white rappers can't say anything negative about Tupac ever. You know what I'm saying? Like, so I think that's the disconnect.
Yeah. Like you don't. Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that Lil Xan thing. I hadn't even thought about that comment before that he made. I kind of just dismissed it at the time, but just to think of the fact that he's already younger, and then he doesn't relate to any of it. He doesn't understand. So to judge what he doesn't understand, it's just weird that his team even let him say what he was saying.
It'd be like me trying to like dissect the Beatles catalog. Like, bro, like I'm so far removed as a 16-year-old. Like I'm so far removed from the Beatles. Like, okay, I like a little U2, you know, like a little Coldplay. I don't understand the Beatles and what the cultural nuance and the significance was of what they were doing back then. Like, so I'm just gonna be like, oh yeah, they're legends, they're icons. Next question. You know?
Yeah, exactly. Okay. One more on this subject, right? Post Malone is like the biggest white rapper right now, quote unquote. But how do you? What's your view of Post Malone and the way that he's moved throughout the game?
Yeah, I think Post Malone is freakishly talented. I like his music melodically. I think he does really cool stuff. I think it's even more interesting how he came up. I don't know if you saw the whole like he moved to LA with some YouTube video gamers, you know, and so I think even the way they try to tell that story, this rags to riches story, like like he has some homies that were doing YouTube full time, living in a mansion, and he was living with them. So when he got ready to do music, I feel like there had to have been some type of outlets and platforms for him to get on, even if it's just building relationships with blogs or whatever, you know, whatever was popping at the time. So I think his story is interesting, and the way they use technology and YouTube to get on is fascinating. I think, you know what, I would agree with him, honestly, in that I don't think he's a rapper. Like, I've never saw him as a rapper. When I first heard him, I was like, oh, this is like T-Pain, you know, like this is like that wave, like this is like a white T-Pain. I don't think T-Pain is a rapper, you know what I'm saying? I think T-Pain is a singer that makes hip hop, you know. So I think T-Pain or Post Malone is a singer that makes hip hop, you know. And so I agree, like, yeah, you're not really a rapper, you know, but I guess those lines are getting blurred. I think some of his comments in terms of just like genres and all this kind of stuff, I think I get it, but I think it's like, bro, you want to make diverse music, dope. Like you love country, dope. Like I'm not mad at any of that. Just don't come into the space and poop on hip hop. Like don't poop on this culture. You know what I'm saying? And like I just feel like we should be, as white males, like we should be the most empathetic and the most white males in hip hop. We should be the most sensitive, the most empathetic towards the plight of Black people. If you actually understand what hip hop is, like, how could I ever say anything sideways or weird about like Black culture or hip hop culture and be like, oh, well, no, there's no more genre, you know? So I just think some of that stuff he said is just, I don't know. I think it's in poor taste at the least.
Okay. Yeah. I think I definitely agree with everything you said. I think my biggest thing when it comes to Post Malone is there's a disconnect somewhere between maybe the things he's saying, but then because he might say all these things about branding, and I don't want this type of allure. I don't want to be a rapper. I don't want to necessarily be even hip hop. But when you look at, I don't know who did branded him and brought his image about, but it wasn't him. I'm pretty sure it wasn't him. It was a team around him. He was branded as a rapper or deep hip hop imagery wise. Like if you look at him when he was with the video gamers, the short shorts, the goofy, he was goofy. He was like the stereotypical goofy white guy, that white humor, all of that stuff. Nothing wrong with it. I watch TV, like plenty of shows and stuff. Like I laugh. I thought that was funny too, right? But then you look at him almost like instantly, he's this other image with the braids, the golds, and he's that image. So once you start to speak down on that culture and you see this instant change, it kind of feels like, I don't know, it starts to feel like you don't appreciate a culture that you're moving, and that's why people say stuff like culture virtual and things like that. Obviously, he's talented. Nobody can deny he's talented, and being talented and making dope music doesn't necessarily mean that you have a great perspective on what you're doing or how you go about your business.
I think it's the team at Universal Republic. I think the label that he signed to, like he may say like, I don't make hip hop, but it's like, bruh, like they're branding you as a hip hop artist.
They're branding you.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I think they know what they're doing.